Okay, I'll let you go first, sir.
All right, so my name is Don Clark. For those that don't know, author of The Edge. I'm making a conscious decision to build a life you deserve. I pretty much go into a, a, a deep discussion about why we think what we think, like how our paradigms were shaped from childhood up to adulthood, and how those things affect our everyday life, both in a negative and positive way. And
Well, all right.
yeah,
Yeah, so I'm Vanessa Whiting, the author of The Matrix, A Look Inside Domestic Violence, a situation that we don't commonly deal with because it is a subject that's very hard to address. But so many people deal with that on a daily basis. And because it's Christmas time, the holidays, a lot of people deal with that more often, but it is something that happens every day. Yeah, it conversation we need to have more often. But it's tough to start, and that's why I did the book so we can have some conversations. So let's start talking about it.
right. And where would you like to start? Because that's new to me. I mean, I know domestic violence exists, but I didn't know that it's a little worse around the holidays. Why do you think that is?
Because a lot of people deal with more stress with finances and want to make sure that they have holiday gifts on top of everything else, like the day-to-day stresses. But then you compound the holidays with that and want to make sure everybody that you love get gifts at that time. It becomes a little stressful. And so that stress ends up being manifested and in anger, and it becomes a domestic situation. Most people don't really think about it like that, but it happens before you even realize it.
Gotcha. Now, is because me, I talk a lot about health, and that's kind of like my thing. I like to
Right, right, right.
I like to tie in the science and everything into domestic violence, but I don't. I think you more so dealt with your own particular situation in your book. I haven't gotten into it yet, but it is on my list of books
It's
to
on
read.
the agenda.
It's just going in order of the books that I'm reading. But yeah, I just know domestic violence through what I saw growing up. But I never thought to look at it, from that standpoint where, around the holidays is getting worse. And it makes sense because with me understanding science and health, I know that food and just vitamin D from the sunlight is one of the things that causes stress levels to rise. And I can see how in a relationship that might also be the case for two people that are, they're already in a domestic violent situation. But like you said, you're also trying to do stuff for other family members. Now,
Right. You trying to do life in general, and then to try to add the holidays on top of just kind of doing your day to day, it gets to be a little bit much for most people.
right,
And it's unfortunate that it happens at the holiday time, but it does, you know.
right. So what do you feel like is the reason people stay around? I know that's one of the things you talk about in your book is like people, they feel like they have to stay in these situations. And I know we had a discussion one day about how people don't understand why they stay. It's not as easy as saying, I'm done with this. It's over. I don't want to do this no more. It's not that simple.
No.
So
Well, the thing that I want to really address is that's the big question.
yeah,
Why do people stay? One of the biggest things is that people don't realize leaving is the deadliest time to exit a domestic violence situation. So most times, it's a combination of things. People have children that they don't want to have affected. They don't want to have family members involved, and sometimes even pets. Um, if the pets for that person is their family, those items are ones that are addressed as a threat by the abuser. So the person that's the victim,
Mm-hmm.
wants to protect everything that they love at all costs. So it's not easy to say, I'm just going to go now, because the abuser may say, well, I'm just going to take your pet and throw him out the door, or I'm going to,
Wow.
harm your family member. So the person that's the victim ends up saying, well, to make the family safe or the animal safe, you endure that type of abuse so that nobody else is harmed. And being a survivor, I know what that's like, because I tried to protect my family. My family had no idea until I was completely out of the situation that any of that stuff happened to me. They had no idea, because
Yeah.
it's just not something, there's a level of shame and embarrassment that you go through when you're dealing with that, because you find yourself in that situation. So the last thing you really want is to tell your family, and for your family to say, well, why you just won't leave?
Right. And I
You know?
remember that your father, like, how he knew what was going on.
Right.
And
He didn't know. And
he thought this guy was like,
him.
the best guy in the world. He didn't know that, you were being abused. He didn't know.
Right. Right. And when you have your family that loves you and wants to protect you, the you know that if you say anything, that's going to escalate the whole situation to a different level. So a couple of things could happen. Either they're going to get hurt, or they're going to go to jail because they hurt your abuser. And then you got to deal with all of that, like that trickle down effect, because what happens to everybody involved, you know, all of the family, everybody, from your parents down to your children. So, and that's the kind of stuff that the victim is looking at. Like, if I really draw everybody in, what happens to them, And there was a case in Atlanta that the brother of the victim decided he was gonna go over to help his sister, and he ended up being shot and killed because he was trying to rescue. And that's why when you find out the situation of a family member or a loved one, and you end up being the person that's going to be the safe haven or the rescue house, you have to have a plan in place before you actually go into rescue. You got to know what you're doing. You got to know what you're up against. You got to have a plan in place for the victim and for yourself, including law enforcement, because you need to have some backup. If you don't do those things and have a plan, and you go in because we get excited, we're going to go in and we're going to help, we're going to save, end up in a situation like that gentleman did, and he lost his life. And now she has to live with, the loss of her brother because he was coming in to help her out.
Wow. See, that's I guess that's something that my brother used to try and tell me, because I was like I was the kid always trying to jump in. Like, if anything happened to my mom, I was like, I'm gonna protect
Right,
my mama. But he was always the one telling me,
right.
you gotta stay out of grown people's business. And I just, I was just this hard kid, just feeling like, nah, like, ain't nobody gonna put their hands on my mama. Y'all crazy.
Exactly. And
Like,
that goes for anybody,
right,
anybody that you care about. That is the instinct that you have, is to go in and rescue. I need to go in and make the situation right. But if we don't think through what the situation is or what the outcome of the situation could be, and that it could turn deadly for the victim and the person that's trying to help, um, then yeah, I mean, you end up in a situation that the family's having to pick up pieces, and maybe even bury a family member, and that's not something that you want.
right. So, do you feel like there's a like, as you in a relationship, do you feel like a part of the reason you don't leave is because you feel like you can save him? Like, do you feel like you can change him? You're supposed to stick around because you're married, and that's what they say about marriage, is you're supposed to stand by your partner until death
Right.
part. And it's like, it's funny that you say until death do us part, because I'm dying over here. Like, y'all don't know what I'm going through when y'all not around. So
That's
what?
that's it. Yes, that is a part of it. Like, every situation is different, but for a lot of people, That is the case, especially for married couples, because we're taught in the, you know, the religious community, you do stay until death do you part. And I had that conversation with a young lady. And where do you draw the line? And are you putting that particular scripture in context? Like, that is not what that meant. It didn't mean that you stay until somebody kills you. It means that you stay naturally until that person, their life ends or your life ends. It doesn't mean that you're supposed to stay until somebody purposely ends your life by, you know, by murder or whatever the degree that is.
Right.
And I think that's a conversation that we need to have on that level, because it's misunderstood. And there are so many women that stay because of that reason. And you want to do the right thing. You know, you want to do the right thing. You want to make sure that you didn't fail in the marriage, or that you didn't see it all the way through. The cost of, and family members who are ministers, and they'll tell you, I can walk through the spiritual side of what you do in the marriage, but when it comes to physical violence, I don't have an answer. So if you don't have that, kind of help walk you through and be okay with the decision that you make to walk away and walk away alive, you know.
Right. Because I mean that's like the biggest thing. Going back to what we were saying earlier about how people they always want to know, well, why are you still there? Why are you staying if you know that this man is putting his hands on you? Now, I also understand that females can also be the aggressor, the abusive one.
And
So,
this is true.
like I said, I haven't quite had a chance to read your book, but is that something you also touch on? Like, do you touch on like the women, the female side of things? Like, do you touch on the women abusing the men?
I do mention it a little bit, but not as much in the book per se. I do when I sessions, or I do group
That's another book.
seminars. I say again.
I said if that's another book, don't give it away.
That's another book.
Okay.
That can possibly be another book. But the reason I don't touch on it a whole lot, I do touch on it a little bit in the book. But the reason the women is because statistically the women are the ones that are making the claims, you know, going to the police, losing their lives. You don't hear about it a lot for the men, because many men, you can probably attest, you don't want to go to the police and tell them your woman is beating you down.
Right.
So there's an embarrassment for that. So there's a small percentage of men that actually report their abuse, but it happens. It happens on the regular. I had a man to purchase the book for his brother, because his sister-in-law she's the aggressor. She's the abuser in the relationship. He doesn't want to tell the family because he don't want them to look at her a certain way, and he don't want them to look at him a certain type of way, because then he looks like he's to allow that to happen in a situation. But it's really not him being less than a man. It's him being, he's not putting hands back on her, because violence begets violence, and it doesn't save anybody. You know what I mean? It just makes things worse.
Yeah, because I've witnessed that personally, and the thing about us men, well, yeah, of course you have the men that don't want to be like, they don't want to be quote unquote soft, so they
Right.
don't want to come out and say that this woman is doing this and this and this. But there's also um where a man, and at the end of the day, it's just not a healthy relationship. But
Not at all.
sometimes we know we don't want to put our hands on a woman, so we would rather go try and get help before the situation takes us to the next level. And then
Right.
because we know how the system is set up, it's like it's her word against mine. If she hit me 100 times and I hit her back once,
Once.
yeah, I'm still gonna be the one.
You are going to jail. Exactly.
And that's just the way it's set up. And at the end of the day, it's really all a lot of it is, just the system we live in is designed in a way where it separates us from our family. It breaks the family up.
Right. Exactly.
And
But I do want to say this because I don't want people to think that that's or that it's right for a woman to do that, because it's not right for anybody to violate anybody like that. But the problem is, and this is my opinion, because I've lived that, is when you have a situation like that, it's tough to talk about.
right.
But it's so unfair, like you said, it's unbiased because the system is set up so that if a man does that, it's automatic because he's usually the dominant person. He's the heavier, of the two. He was built to be,
Stronger.
he was built to be, that dominant person in any relationship. But it doesn't make it right. And I don't want anybody to understand what I'm saying. It's not right by any means, but what we need to do is, have those conversations that he can go that safe, or somebody that he can talk to say, this is what's going on, so he can get help too, because, you know, we don't want to see anybody in that type of situation, male or female.
Right. Now, my question to um, being that you went through it yourself, does it give you a different lens? Like when you're out and about and you see couples, can you are you able to identify the women or the men that are dealing with domestic violence? Like, does it have a face? Does it look like anything?
It's sometimes yes, but sometimes no. Um, because if you were anybody like me, I grew up in a family that stays in the house. So you have to put on a certain type of face when you in front of the public. So if you looked at me, you would know that I was going pretty much like I do right now. Everybody that's going through, they don't always show physical signs. So
Uh-oh, you there? I think we lost her. Try and get her back. Are you there?
I see though.
Huh? I can see you, but I can't hear you. I think you're coming in. You there?
I can see you now.
All right, all right. But what were you saying though? What did you?
Um, you asked if you could tell on somebody's face if they are either the victim or the abuser.
Yeah.
Sometimes yes, but a lot of times not, because the most common sign is when somebody has bruises, but you don't always see bruises. And what I was saying is, I was in that situation, but people looked at me and they wouldn't know. I looked pretty much like I did now. So I didn't have, the outer appearance that I let people see those physical bruises. They was always covered up. Now there are cases that you can see. You can see the fear in somebody's face. Don't always have to have physical abuses, but when you see the person that they're with and they respond, from aggressive conversation, and they kind of skitch, you can kind of tell
Hmm.
from that, but you don't always see it.
Got you. So,
Because one thing I want to say about the couple of things I want to say about the abuser is they don't always appear like we might think they are. Like they don't come across as a bully. They come across very, very charismatic for the most part. They you wouldn't know they are very loving in public, but behind closed doors, there's something different. So you don't always see that out in public. because my abuser was very good at what he did. He had pretty much everybody in the family and the church full. So when they saw him out, they was just like, "Oh my gosh, she best thing ever," you know. But when we got home, you know, but they wouldn't know that, and that's what I call the Jekyll and Hyde syndrome. You know, because they're one way the public, or in the second they could be something different.
Wait, say that again.
I call that the Jekyll and Hyde effect.
The Jekyll and Hyde.
Because Jekyll and Hyde. If you look back at the old movie, Dr. Jekyll is smart, but when he changed, he was completely a monster, and that's what an abuser becomes when they in a moment of rage, because they can be real sweet, and that's why when the question is asked, why do they stay, is because even though the abuse takes place and you've had your, you've come out with scars, your face or lip is, bruised because you've been beaten down. Once they calm down, person, they're compassionate, they're trying to fix you up, they're apologizing and making sure that everything is okay and assuring you that it's not going to happen again. And a lot of times it can go for several months, sometimes even several years before you even have another episode. So in between that, what we call the honeymoon phase, everything gets good, so you feel like it's going to be okay, so you try to work through, and then all of a sudden then there's another.
Now I have quite a bit of questions, but I know
Okay.
I know what people want to know because we see it and we hear it all the time. Like we see the movies with the domestic violence, but there's always this thing about sex. If the sex good, a lot of people feel like, or couples, people in a relationship, they feel like because the sex is still good, and they don't feel like they can find that anywhere else. They feel like they have to stay in that situation, and they may even joke about it, like, he might put his hands on me,
But exactly, and for
right,
everybody it's different. But for some people, that's a big deal because it's hard to find. You know what I mean? Like relationships are hard to find just in general. But then when you find that person, for the person that's very important to, then yeah, they may say, well, it don't happen all that much, but I can't let it go because I ain't, that's a true statement. So the dynamics of reasons why people decide they want to stay, that could be one of the reasons.
right,
Children and family, that's another one. But there's a lot of dynamics, and when you do a survey of people, that's one that's included.
right,
It's definitely included, and it goes both ways. It's not just for the person that's the receiver; it's also the person that's the giver. Because the person that's their partner, they may not want to give that up because it's good to them. So in order for them not to have somebody else experience what they have, that's when they take it to the extreme. It's just like, well, no, if I can't have you, then nobody else will, because they know the dynamics of the intimate part of the relationship. So that's a good question.
and I guess I mean I even wonder how it is possible to have sex with a person that's abusing you, because we all know that sex is, it's not just it's physical, it's emotional, it's spiritual, it's everything.
Right.
Like
Right.
it's like one of the highest forms of love. So in that moment, you're expressing your love for another person. But if this person is the same person that's putting their hands on you, I don't understand how yeah. I mean, we're having a discussion as far as how we don't understand, or how people say they don't understand how you would stay. But I don't understand how you could still have quote unquote good sex with a person that's abusing you.
Well, you kind of get to the point where you just go through the motion to some degree,
Mhm.
um, because you just know it's easier for you to survive the relationship, to
Uh,
go through the motion, versus really being attached in that loving fashion. So it kind of becomes one of those things that you do because you need to survive, not necessarily because it's still that loving relationship that you remember when you first met. But you do that to make the abuser think that it's okay, but you doing that as the victim to survive, to kind of just, sustain and stay alive.
Right, right.
Because it is one of those things that's real emotional and physical and all that. But sometimes when you've been in a relationship that long and you just trying to survive it, you go beyond that and you don't even get the emotional love. It's just like, let me do what I need to do
Right.
to get through. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because if you don't, then you set them off. They want to know what's going on, and then that sends you to a different level of abuse when you don't follow through. You know what I mean? If you don't seem like everything is goody goody like it was.
Right. That makes sense. Now,
Yeah,
do you feel like domestic violence is an ego thing?
it is. It's about some of it is a lot about ego, but it's about being dominant and in control
Yeah.
for
One
sure.
of the things I do understand about domestic violence is that a lot of a lot of people, both men and women, they have childhood issues
Yes.
they're dealing with, and they don't even know that they have these childhood issues that they haven't even taken care of. So outside of the childhood
Yeah.
issues, again, because my book, I deal with the paradigm. So I understand that we grow up, we watch movies, we even see certain things in cartoons, and so it's important for parents to really monitor what the kids are watching, what the kids are listening to, because even the music that we listen to nowadays is degrading the women. And now
Oh yeah.
you even have women that are that are asking for certain things from a man that's considered domestic abuse.
Right.
It's like,
You have to forgive me because I want to make sure I don't lose the connection. So I apologize for that.
it's cool. But yeah, so you have the music, you have the TV shows, you have the movies, you have so many things around you that's creating the mentality around
Right.
like whatever you put in is what comes out.
Yep. Yeah.
So if you're putting in a degrading music, that's what you're gonna believe. If you're watching the movies where the women are getting slapped around or the men are being manipulated by the women, that's what you're gonna feel like I want to be like this person, or I like how this person did that. On top of that, we only have our parents or whoever we grew up around, even the grandparents, like we have them as a model. So we watch everything they do. Like kids absorb everything. They take
And that's for sure. That is a conditioned and learned behavior. Um, and we don't realize that we do that. And it's not just with violence. It's just everything in day-to-day life. But when you do have a situation where somebody may have grown up in a household that the father did that, then that's all he knows. It doesn't excuse it, gives them a pass, because once you realize that that's what you're going through, then you need to get help for that, because then you send that to the next generation of people, because it's twofold. It's not just that the men think that it's okay. If the girls are watching the men do that, accept that, then they grow up thinking that in the relationship that they have to tolerate that type of behavior because that's the way it's supposed to be, and it's not that way. But if you don't know that that's unhealthy, then you teach unhealthy behavior.
all right. So my next question, or I guess discussion point, is the solution. Because I don't like talking about I don't like just talking about the problems. I like giving solutions. So
Right.
so with you, how would you address somebody that's dealing with a domestic abuse, or do you even address it if they never open up about it? Because like you said, you're hiding.
Yeah.
So
It
you
is a
gonna
very
out, people may not know. They may not even want to ask you about your relationship because they think it's so perfect.
Right,
Outside
right.
of so, what do you feel like is the solution to domestic violence? How do you approach somebody, or what's the best way to open up about it? Who should you go to?
It's because it is so such a touchy subject, and it's something that we don't really talk about. It's not one of those conversations that you can easily have. Like, you can't just, it's hard to just go up to somebody that you may think that's in a situation and say, you can talk to me, tell me about that, because I know something's going on. You have to just let them know that reason that there's something going on that they are uncomfortable with, that you're there to love and support them through that situation. Because if they don't feel safe coming to you, they don't feel safe talking to you, and they're not going to say anything. They're going to continue to keep it hidden.
Right.
If you suspect it, you have to just let them know, if you need anything, I'm here. To remain open. I think the biggest thing, I don't think there's an ideal way to kind of solve the problem. We just have to kind of deal with it as the situation goes on, because we've been fighting this battle for a long time. But I think one of the biggest things that we need to do to kind of get to a place that we can get a solution is to have conversation about it. We need to start talking about it. One thing I mentioned earlier is that we grew up in because the African American community is really high on the list for domestic violence, and then Hispanic community kind of falls under that. It affects everybody, all walks of life. It doesn't matter your race, your religious background, or any of that. But we are at the high because of a lot of financial burdens that we have, and we don't talk about that stuff. We were conditioned as a people, here stays here, and I mentioned that earlier. So if something's going on in the household, we don't talk about what's going on in the household. But in order for us to be that village that we used to be, we need to have conversation as a village, because you know one person's going to help the next person, and then we become a stronger village. But if we don't have conversation about it, then there's nothing we can do about it. There's not going to be any change.
Now, I do touch on a very important point that I feel like you brought up, is that it's it's more likely to happen in the African American quote unquote community and the Hispanic community. And I I don't even just believe, I know that slavery plays a part in this.
Exactly.
And I don't really like to touch on slavery that much because that's also psychological. Like it all goes so deep. But
It.
for
Mhm.
those for the women and men out there, we have to understand that we're only 3 generations away from physical slavery. Like slavery still exists to this day, but it's not just in the black community. It's
Yeah.
all across the board. Like everybody is being manipulated on a mental level into thinking and believing certain things. So when it comes to us as black people, we have to understand that slavery has played a major part in how we treat not just our partners, but our children. Like even whipping the children that's something that was done during slavery. And I know it's a lot of people that's gonna be like, well, I don't, I don't.
Yeah, I know what you mean, though. I know that's a good point.
Yeah, they
It's
like
a
it's
good point.
I got my ass beat, so
And then
this,
we okay, right.
but that alone is that's something that we picked up on from slavery. So you got to think.
And is what you said. It's a mental condition, and it's just like with abuse. It's a mental condition. I mean, if you
Right.
go back to slavery, and I didn't mean to cut you off, but if you go back to slavery, that's exactly what they did to the brothers. It was common. So the behavior that they on became a generational curse to some degree.
Yeah,
It was a learned behavior. So therefore you do it. It doesn't make it right, but you end up doing it, and you don't even know that that's why you're doing it.
exactly. And so that was my whole point is we do a lot of things and we don't understand why we do it, which we have to tap into our subconscious mind and really understand why we do what we do, which is why I wrote the book. Because it's like
That's what I was gonna say. It even goes back to the food, you
yeah,
know.
the food.
To touch on the whole slavery thing, I just want to, and I know you can probably elaborate a little more than I can because you deal with the food, but that is one of the conditions that we had. It was a tradition that we ate certain foods, but the certain foods, I mean, like, I'm just gonna use chitlins because that was commonplace, you know.
Oh,
The fat bag that went in the greens and all that. We don't even realize that that is what they had because they were given the leftovers. So in order to survive and make the family, you know, be able to have substance to continue on, you took what came from the master's table, which happened to be the leftovers. But you know, you fast forward generations, you go, well, I don't know why we do that, but grandmama used to do it all the time. Grandmama
right.
did it because she had to do it. We don't have to anymore, but we did it because that's just what we were taught to do, you know?
Exactly, and that's my thing. It's like we have to tap in. We have to look at why. That's the question we always have to ask. Why did I do this? Take your pride, take your ego out of it, and ask,
Mm-hmm.
why am I doing this? Never mind how people are telling you to whoop your children, because if you if you understand that whooping your child came from slavery, you will also understand that by whooping your child, you're making it okay for somebody else to hit your child. Even when you send your child to school, like if that school says that we paddle children and you have to sign papers saying it's okay, and if that child goes to the office and it's okay to whoop your child, like that's a form of slavery.
Right.
They're manipulating you mentally, and which
Yeah.
is, I don't, I have my thing about the school system. I try to stay away from certain things because I know how I think is not, you like,
And everybody's not gonna think like that because you know we've been conditioned to think a certain way for so long. It's hard to make the transition when you hear somebody say, you know, this is where this came from. You know, this is where it stemmed from. You gotta open your mind and understand it goes beyond what you see. But it's hard to do that when that's what that's what you've been living with all your life.
right. And the greatest power you have is your mind. That's the greatest power that you have within you, is to be able to tap into your mind. And if for so long somebody has been whipping you or giving you the information that they're telling you is right, and that's all you know, they're conditioning you. That's what we mean by mental conditioning, because you're growing up in an environment where you only know what you see. So touching back on the food also, that's one of those things, like you said, like we only do it because grandma did it. But if we ask the question, well, why did grandma do it? Then you got to go back to
Right.
great great grandma. It's like,
Exactly.
great grandma do it. Then you look at why great grandma do it. Then you will understand that they putting the fat in the greens because they're getting the leftovers. They just trying to make it taste good. They made it work. We don't have
Exactly.
it nowadays. We're no longer being controlled physically, but mentally. Like slavery is still in your mind today. It's not. Nobody is hitting you with whips. Nobody has shackles around your ankles. It's That's not
It's
happening.
mind control. And
Yeah,
that's the thing with domestic violence in the relationship and and I say the relationship because that intimate partner relationship, because of the times that we live in, it can be male female and it can be female female or male male. None of that is excluded, but any intimate partner relationship can have the domestic violence. But there's going to be one partner in any of the relationship. I'm not saying that it's right, but there's going to be one partner that's going to be the dominant one in there, and they're going to want to always have the control. And that manipulation starts right there in the mind, just like you talked about. It's conditioned. When you enter into the relationship, it starts out good, but then they set you up to think, okay, this is the way it's going to be. And then over time, after they condition you to believe that things are going to be good, all. But in the meantime, they've already conditioned a level of fear in you, even if it's not physical. It can be the words that they choose to use because they know what's going to set certain things off for you, or cause you to be a little standoffish to them. So they're going to use those certain words to kind of keep you in a place of control, and then you don't even realize it, and before you know it, time has passed, and then the physical happens. Things before you get to the physical, and I want to just touch on that a little bit. Finances are a big part of a domestic violence relationship. So if one person has more finances than the other, or has control over the finances than the other, then that person's still stuck, even though physical may not happen. Talked about before, that person is going to have control over that area as well, because you think if you do it a certain type of way, then you can't have maybe even the finances as an allowance. So people don't look at that as a form of abuse, but it is. And emotional, verbal abuse, all of that comes before the physical even happens. So when you hear somebody calling you out of your name at the beginning, you think it's kind of cute. No, it's not cute. They setting you up to put you in a position that when you have seen them been beaten down by the words that they've been giving you, by then you in a place that you don't think that you can leave, because you've been conditioned to believe that you're not good enough for anybody else, you're not pretty enough for somebody else, or you're not physically attractive enough because maybe you gained too much weight, whatever the situation is. But they're going to condition your mind to believe that those things are true, so then you don't move forward, because you think that they're all you can get. And then at that point, they're going to do what they want to do, and then the physical happens. But before you even get to all that, emotional, financial, all that has taken place before you even see any bruises or marks on the outside. um, One of the things I do want to touch on with the physical side of things is, when you see or somebody that has been in a domestic violence relationship, you may not always hear from them what's going on, but a couple of signs to watch is that this person always finds themselves in the emergency room going on. um, and that's one of the things that I talked to some nurses to watch out for when they see people come in at the hospital, because the victim has to be the one to press charges, but they're not going to want to press charges all the time. But when you see somebody that comes in, nurses need to be alerted, or doctors need to be alerted when they say, oh, I just fell down the stairs, so my arm is broken, or my leg has been messed up. Black eye because you hit the corner of the wall. But if it's some consistency over time, there's always visits to the hospital. You got to start looking at, okay, why? Because are you really that clumsy? People can be clumsy to some degree, but there's always some underlying something when you start to see a pattern like that.
Now, I got any prevent
I'm
domestic?
sorry, repeat the question.
You feel like there are ways to prevent domestic violence? Like, what are some of the signs that you could possibly pick up on if you're? Because I believe in dating right before you actually make the leap into a relationship. Like,
Right.
date, ask a million questions, get to know a person before you get in a relationship with them. And I know a lot of people are, we're all searching for love, and it's like we just feel like it's lack of, and that's not the case. It's an abundance. We live in abundance. We all live in abundance. And touching on the other point, we just, whenever we feel powerless, that's when someone else is able to control and manipulate us in any way that they want to.
Mm-hmm.
Again, my
So
question, my
go ahead,
question,
repeat
if
the question.
yeah, what are some ways to identify a domestic abuser, like somebody that has the characteristics of a woman beater or a man beater?
Well, they're not going to always be real obvious signs, but some of the things to look for would be, excuse me, would be when you have a person that wants to keep the person that they're with
Mm-hmm.
isolated from their family and friends. That's one of the biggest signs. If you start seeing somebody that um, doesn't want you to participate in your family functions and it's only everything evolved around them, you kind of want to start really paying attention to that, because at first when you enter in a relationship, they're going to be good um, on most levels, abusive or not. The first 6 months of a relationship
Mm-hmm.
is like a honeymoon. Everything is good. Everybody's on their best behavior, but let a tragedy happen. Something happened with the car, some sort of life situation. Then that's going to prove to you what kind of person, what kind of character they are under that kind of situation. But if you get to a when you get to a place that they want to isolate you, and it's all about them, and it's all about their family or all about their friends, then you need to kind of start paying attention to that. What we do a lot is, and I can speak as a woman because I'm only, I am a woman, can't speak for a man, but see the good in the man. And when he brings gift and he showers you with everything and tell you everything that you want to hear, that can be good to an extent. But when you hear that all the time, you want to watch that, because it might be something underlying, um, showered with gifts. Why you have to, why is he going the extra mile all the time? Because you want somebody to be able to be themselves. Because one of the things with an abuser is they are very good manipulators. They are good, um, they're good actors to a degree, because they know what to do in front of who, what to say in front of certain people. So in front of the people that they want to give that good impression to, they will. My abuser was just that way, very charismatic. If you met him, you would never think that he would do something out of character, like he did, But this was somebody that in the heat of his moment, almost took my life, and nobody would have ever thought that. I'm just thankful that the trigger didn't go off, and I'm still here to tell the story. So
Right, right.
judge that book by the cover, because they can be real good at hiding who they really are, tend to be. And I don't want to make it seem like that everybody is bad in that character, because they don't intend to be that way, um but they just are, and we have to call it what it is.
And
It doesn't always make them a bad person, but the bad person that do bad things, we need to address those things, so not only that the victim gets help, but the abuser gets help as well, because most times they don't even realize they need help.
I would like to say a lot of when you're dating, have the person you're interested in introduce you to somebody they're close to. And
Exactly.
if you're serious about being with a person, see how they interact with their friends, see how they play, see how they treat their parents or how their parents treat,
Mm-hmm.
because
Definitely.
a lot of times you can look at just how the family is structured and know if you want what the parents have, like his or her parents, you will know that this is what he was brought up around. Or if he has like a you know a if the mother or father has a step parent that they're with, then you can kind of see how they interact. and
And
with
that's a good point. That's a good point,
and with
because a lot of
you want to
uh, uh
go ahead.
I'm sorry, you go ahead and finish.
No, I was saying a lot of times with that you can ask them, have they addressed certain things, like, or you don't even have to ask them if they've addressed that themselves. You can just more so ask them their thoughts on it. Like, what are your thoughts about your parents doing this or your friends doing this? And a lot of times, based on the answer that you get back, you'll know how they think about that certain situation, and you would have to make a wise decision at that point whether you want to stick around. Like you have to take that aspect of your relationship or your potential relationship serious. Because if not, then that's how you're gonna wind up in these situations where you're stuck and you just feel like you're supposed to fix it instead of just leaving. And I mean, it's not that we already established how it's not that easy to leave because it's so much tied into it. You're connected.
Yeah, because once you get into the relationship, before you get to, a physical place, you've been in a relationship probably long enough that you've fallen in love with that person. So it's not easy to fall out of love with somebody and just walk away. So that's a good point.
Right.
Um, what male or female, we have to pay attention to the signs, not just pay attention to the signs, but when the signs present themselves, they are what they are, and you need to deal with that way, because we tend to want to fix because we're nurturers by nature. So if something's wrong, you come in and you say, well, I can make him better. I just need a little time. It'll be okay. No, if the signs are there, we are given intuition for a reason. And when those intuitions say that this is a red flag, you need to pay attention to the red flag.
Yes,
You know,
especially for the women out there that's always talking about I want me a dude from the hood. That that right there is like one
but
of the
don't, why you say that? Ain't nothing wrong with that.
right. That's what I'm saying. Like I get it because me myself, I come from the hood, so I know there's this positive connotation from women, but there's also the negative connotation if you think about life in general. So we think about the hood, we think about a guy who, he's hard, he can protect the home. And a lot of women they look for protectors. However,
And that's the key.
what you have to factor in is that if we're living in the hood, we have a lot of family issues. There's not one family that's in the hood that doesn't have issues. And we, like you said, financial. So you're talking about finances, you're talking about emotional, like how is your family structured? Because a lot of times in the hood, most of the families are broken. You don't find too many mothers and fathers in the same household, or like it's always like a step parent or something. Like they're not sticking together because that
And that is a shift that you really do need to pay attention to. I was going to say that when you brought that up before. Um, when you do have those broken families, there are some good people that come out of the hood. That's it. I mean, you have to know, if we wouldn't be, some of us from the hood wouldn't be as good as we are if we didn't go through some of the struggles. But we do need to look at those family dynamics, because a lot of women that don't have a male in the household, you look for a man that's going to be the protector. But at the same time, how was he structured? Like, who was he structured by to show him what the protector is? You know what I mean? A lot of, if you have a two family household, most women that look for somebody that's going to be their life partner, they're looking for what they had in the household. So the point that you made about, if there's a single family home or it's a step parent, not fully understand what the dynamics of a relationship should be, or what the loving part of the relationship should be, because the parents didn't have it.
right,
They ended up in divorce. So there was something that was going on that break. It doesn't mean that your relationship can't be good, but it just means that you've been conditioned to look for something differently than that two parent, family. And it doesn't make one better than the other. I'm not saying that. Alternate family, step families or whatever, or what do they call them now, blended families. There's some blended families that are good together, and they've made some changes because of what they did grow up with, and they wanted something better. But you have to consciously know that that's what you need to look for, that's what you want, because you may not have gotten that, but you do really have to look at all those signs. And when the signs are there, we got to pay attention to what those signs are. That's it. Thanks. That's it.
Yeah, so my thing is, it's like, if you know you're dealing with somebody that comes from the hood, like, you just have to be, you have to automatically be cautious. And I don't mean you have to be afraid to love that person, because we all need love. We all need somebody that's like, if we're dealing with a bad situation, we need somebody to show us what good is. Even if we're not a bad person coming from that bad situation, we still need somebody to match our idea of what good is, because we at least have an idea from somewhere. And a lot of times the way you find that is just having a normal conversation. Like, when you dating, instead of going to the movies every day where you don't really get to talk to the person, go somewhere where you can talk. And
Where you
like,
can talk.
yeah, and really ask questions, like, get to know them. Don't just feel like you already have the answer, or your relationship with this person is supposed to be the same as somebody else's relationship, because at the end of the day, you're you're creating something. You're not like, you can take bits and pieces from other people and implement them, but you're creating a new energy, a new family establishment. So it starts with the foundation. It's just like building a house. You got to start with the foundation. So
You
whatever.
do. You definitely have to do that. But I don't want people to walk away thinking that there's something wrong with, relationships that come out of the hood, or, male or female, because some good people, um, depending on whatever your hood is, And
Right,
one of the things that I talk about in the book is that violence has no boundary. It has no color, it has no race. It don't matter where you came from. Um, so, and this is not to discredit anything that you say about, women wanting a strong brother from the hood. It's not to discredit that at all. But it doesn't matter where you come from or where you find that person in the relationship, because some women decide, well, I'm not going to get somebody from the hood because they're going to cause me problems.
right,
That's not always the case. You know what I'm saying? So I want to make that a clear point. That's not always the case. You can go to a nice suburban community and find you a man, and he can still be a vicious abuser. You know what I mean? But because he has on a nice suit, lives in a nice house, and drive a nice car, don't make him better than the brother from the hood. You know what I mean? Because he may have just as well some good values. Just because he came from a certain walk of life doesn't make him less than the other person, or the other person better because he live in the suburbs, because it happens everywhere.
right,
Judges and police officers and firefighters, even ministers that are
right,
abusers, but you don't know it. You know what I mean? But because of their position, people don't look at them as that person. But we have people sitting on the bench who are laying down the gavel to other folks who are doing the same thing in their own household, but you don't know that because that conversation hasn't been had. Because when you look at law enforcement, they're going to protect each other. So if they come before the judge and they have an issue, you're not going to know about their issue as much unless somebody comes up dead. So talked about as much, but they deal with it all the time. They just cover it better. They have a brotherhood um, that's not going to allow that to be, a topic of conversation out in the public. But it happens, and I just don't want people to have the impression that, just because you're from a certain walk of life, or, your family status was a certain thing, that because it doesn't, domestic violence is not excluded from any walk of life.
right, right. And so, yeah, touching back on that point, you have to look at their upbringing and just have the conversation in advance. Not Don't wait until something gets fishy and you're already, quote unquote, in love with the person. You have
Right.
to have the conversation in advance. But I
Hmm.
want to ask you, what is your favorite chapter in your book? Your favorite chapter? Like, what is the
My favorite,
who stood out to you?
I don't know if I actually have a favorite. If I had to choose, be the personal stories. And I say that because it gives any reader like real life look at what's going on and that they're not the only one. If I had to choose a favorite, because we sometimes find ourselves in those situations and we don't think that anybody else is going through it.
Hmm.
That chapter tells you that it happens all over, multiple age groups, and it's real. And it's real for everybody.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah. So, as far as I know, we touched on the some of the solutions, but would you say that just dating and communication would be the way to prevent it? Because, like you said before, there's really there's no one size fits all.
Right.
So the answer would have to be prevention, and you can't quite prevent the whole thing. You just have to do as best you could. What do you feel like that? What is going to prevent it? Like, is it just communication, having a conversation, or is there something else that you feel like is going to prevent domestic violence? Or if there's not a preventative measure, then what would be the solution to somebody already in the situation trying to get out of the situation the best way possible?
There a couple of things because it is no ideal. But you did touch on it a little bit about the communication in the beginning parts of the relationship. But on top of having the conversation about what the family dynamics was, once you realize that the person that you in the relationship with may have had some life issues that caused them to, think a certain way or respond a certain way because they had the lack of, male structure to show them what a relationship should be like, and the lack of, physical violence. Once you realize that, then that person needs to have some professional counseling or therapy to kind of work through their own issues before you bring somebody else into a relationship that may in turn, touch certain buttons for you as an individual that may cause you to go to that physical place. um, we do need to have more prevention programs, and there's not a lot of that right now. That's why we have to still, we still deal with the violence on the level that it is, but we need to have conversation. We do need to have programs in place, but each individual city or state needs to develop something, and we just haven't gotten to that place yet. A lot of states still don't even have safe houses or retreat places that women can go, or men, as the victim. So we need to put a lot more of those things in place so that, because we know we're going to deal with this, it's not something that's just going to go away. But knowing that, we have to involve our community leaders to be involved and have the conversation that this is actually an epidemic. This is something that's going on, and we need to, come together as a group of people to try and put some things in place that when people do finally get the courage to use their voice and say this is what's happening, we need to have a place for them to go, that they feel safe, that they can really get help. And we just don't have that in a lot of places just yet.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I mean, just to add a point, um, yeah, what I was saying earlier about creating, we one of the things I touched on, I got the title temporary or forever, and that's a chapter on relationships, and I basically encourage both women and men to pick somebody that's in a good relationship or what you would consider good, and model the good aspects of those
Right.
relationships.
Right.
And if you don't if you come across a situation where it's not that, and you never really have the answer because it comes to you in the strangest way. It's not strange, but I would say strange for lack of a better term. But the answers come to you in the strangest way. But you have to follow your intuition and just know when a situation is or isn't for you.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's better safe than sorry.
Exactly.
And they're like they say this. I don't eat fish, but there's plenty of fish in the sea.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's hard. It's hard sometimes when people want to be in a loving relationship, and those relationships always they start off like they're gonna be loving. So you want to give it the best shot because nobody wants to say, I didn't try, or I failed, or I backed out too soon. But going back to your whole intuition, when you have a feeling or there's a red flag that you feel uncomfortable with, then you need to, follow through with that because it's telling you that it's a red flag for a reason, you know?
And I will say some good characteristics for somebody listening would be somebody that's their own growth. Like they're always trying to grow as a person. They don't want to be stagnant. They don't like staying in the same place in life. That's a good characteristic of somebody who's not afraid to change. Somebody who's courageous enough to say that, you know what, my old ways were wrong. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm willing to change my ways. That's somebody,
Exactly.
yeah, that's somebody you can more than likely do something new with. You also have the people that, you want somebody that will pick up a book. They don't just believe everything they've been told. They'll sit down, they'll read with you. They'll they'll consider new ideas and new ways of doing things. They'll consider a solution to any challenge because every relationship is going to have its challenge. I don't care
Oh yeah, definitely.
how good it looks on the outside, and you don't want to be that person that's just running away from every challenge because you dealt with something or like I said, like you want to model somebody, but it's it's a thin line between everything. So you wanna just find some good characteristics of some people that are not afraid to grow or not afraid to change their ways because in that case you're more likely to move in the right direction in your relationship if you can find that person that's willing to continue to grow because that's
That's a good point because you have to be willing to grow. And growing is not always comfortable, you know? It's not always the comfortable place. We get comfortable with change, and then even in the relationship, even if it's abusive, you tend to stay because it's the comfortable that you know. It might be bad, but it's the bad that you know. But how comfortable in the long term are you going to be with that? Um, and you got to really consider, can this really cost me my life? Yeah, I mean, see it all the time. Um, people apologize for like the worst of situations, but at the end of the day, you never know when that person is going to snap, and then you have no control over that situation and then lose a life, so you have to just be conscious of that.
right. And I guess we can wrap it up soon, but I do have like a I know I have a question that I really want to ask for a lot of women out there because the thing is the women always, well, I can't say always because I don't know everybody's situation, but most of the time, the women get the short end of the stick because they have their, like you said, family is involved. So if a lot of women are staying in situations or getting the short end of the stick because they have children
Right.
and they have children with this person that's abusing them. They've given up everything. They're not working. They're being a stay-at-home mom. They're allowing the man to go out, make all the money. They're taking care of the house. They're doing everything that they've been told is right. And now this man is putting hands on them. How how would you tell this woman or young queen that, or what's the best solution for her? Because we know the reason, one of the reasons they don't want to leave this situation because it's like, where am I gonna go? Like I'm being taken care of. I don't have my own money. I have these kids. He's still taking care of the kids. He's just beating me.
Right. And that's common.
So how do
Um,
you, I guess what would you tell the young lady, or what is the what do you direct the conversation for somebody in a situation like that?
well, one of the things I would say is to find a person that you know that you can trust with your story. First of all, and then know that this person can be if they're not the safe haven for you, then you know where to go to find safety. But there's always got to be a plan. You can't just decide one day that, okay, I'm going to do it today with no plan. You got to make sure that you put aside some finances somehow, have all of your important papers and documents for you and the kids in a place that you can just kind of grab and go if you need to at the moment. There is, I don't know, every state is different, but the national hotline for domestic violence is 1-800-799-SAFE. So if you don't have somebody that you trust that you can call for a resource, that will be a number to call for some sort of resource. But I suggest having a plan in place. I just remember when I was in my situation, I couldn't just leave because I did have kids involved and I wanted the kids to be safe, but I definitely had to start putting away some money so that when I did try to do my escape, that I could go and be safe doing it. Because I was kind of in that situation for a long time when my kids were younger. Their father didn't want me to work because he wanted to be in control of the money and where I went, what I did, who I saw, so that if I decided I wanted to go somewhere, I couldn't. I didn't have any resources to do that. But I had to, put a plan in place. But I didn't have anybody telling me that I needed to put a plan in place. But I suggest that copies and, a safe word for that person that you decide you can trust, that if you needed to leave at the last minute, have a safe word for you and the kids, so that if a phone call needed to be made, all you had to do was say that one word and that person knew that it was an emergency. Because a lot of times we can't even call the sheriff's department or police department and let them know that we need help, because they kind of get stuck in the touchy situation when it comes to domestic violence, and they don't always want to come out. And if they do come out, the women don't always want to call, because when they do come out, if they don't see physical marks, then they don't do anything. They just let them in and go cool off. So you got to have a backup plan. That's my best suggestion at the moment. But if you got a community of people that you can trust, that's what you need.
Yep, yep.
And it's not going to be easy no matter what. No matter how you look at it, it's not going to be easy. Because when you walk away and you don't have anything, it's hard starting over when you got somebody taking care of you.
Right. And I don't know if something you would deal with your company, like, or do you take in women that have dealt with domestic abuse? If so, is there anywhere where they can contact you? And
I
I
don't
think, go ahead.
I don't have a personal safe house, and that's why I recommend the national hotline, because I don't know what state, excuse me, I don't know what state some people might be in, but I know in Georgia, they have a couple of safe houses in a couple of counties. But I suggest that do some research on the place that you live and find out if there's a community house that you can go to at when you call the national hotline. But they usually can give the directions to that. But do the researches on where you live, what resources that you have, if there's a safe house, that you can retreat to when you do leave, and what the safety plan is, including the law enforcement. So if you need to leave, you know the steps to do when that time comes.
Right, right. Now, do you go ahead and wrap up on quite a bit, but I do want you, like, is there anything that you want to share or any final words, remarks that you want the young women out there to hear or
Um, in
advice?
in closing, if I had to do some final words, I just know that it takes a lot of courage to decide to walk away from a relationship that might be abusive. So that if it's anybody listening, if it's not them that's in the situation themselves, I just want to encourage the victim to just be strong in their own decision, because it takes a lot of courage to walk away. But if you decide to walk away, know that it's going to be okay. But have some people in your corner that that can be loving and supportive. But know that your life is worth living. And nobody should have control of you, but you.
Right, right. And from a male perspective, I would like to encourage women to, if if you're gonna stay, if you decide that, or you can't say you're deciding, but if you just feel like you really want to stay in this relationship, then you have to understand the masculine and feminine energy. The feminine energy is much stronger than the masculine. And with that being said, your power is in your nurturing. You have to you have to tap into that strongly enough to where you can, maybe, I can't say this is like a guaranteed solution, but you have to tap in and really get this man to a point where you can get through to him. Really sit him down and have the conversation. Be soft with it. I'm not saying you can't be aggressive, because being an aggressive woman doesn't necessarily mean you're a bad person. But if you're dealing with somebody who's abusing you, then taking the soft road is not it's not a negative thing to take that route. You can still try to sit this guy down and get through to him when if he's a drinker, you want to make sure he's sober. If he's just not that understanding, try to figure out a way where you can maybe plan a dinner, do something for him where you can kind of, I don't want to say corner him, but you can have him in a happy state of mind to where you're more likely to get through. And if all else fails, then at that point, like she said, you want to start planning your exit strategy, because at that point you you've tried the most powerful thing, which is love. Never mistake that. Like, love is the most powerful thing you can do with another person. You can never, don't feel like you can control the situation, but you just have to control who you are. You can only control you. You can't control anybody else. So don't try to fix it from the outside, but do your best to fix it from the inside. You're if you really want to try to fix it.
So before, I really appreciate the male perspective on that. But I do have to plug, just like you said, I do have to plug. I don't know if you can see it. You might be able to hold it up better than I can.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but the matrix gives you some signs to look for, if you don't even realize that you're in a domestic violence situation. But if you do know that you're in a situation, I do want to give the national hotline number again. No matter where you are in the country, in the continental U.S., is 1-800-799-SAFE. That's 1-800-799-7233. And they should be able to give any type of resource that's necessary. They also have some safety plans that they can give, or even if you want to just have somebody to talk to and you haven't decided that you're ready to leave yet, they can give you some resources, and they have counselors online to talk to you to discuss that as well. It's been proven statistically that before a woman actually makes the final exit of an abusive relationship, she's probably made the attempt or even said she's going to do it at least 8 times before she actually does.
Hmm.
I just want women to know, if it takes you that long and you do it safely, then that's what's important. But we do want to make sure that in any of those situations, you think those things through clearly, make sure everybody involved is going to be safe and that everybody can get out alive. Because most times when those things turn violent, they turn violent and they do it quickly. But you want to make sure that everybody is safe in the process. But know that you're worth it. No matter what, you are worth it. And if you feel like you're worth it and whatever it takes to get you to that place, then you take those steps to get to that place.
Boom.
So appreciate the dialogue.
Hey, it's always good when we link up.
Always a pleasure.
I'll add your information to the description. That way people can get in contact you, and if they have any more questions, and they can get in touch with you directly. And you can, I don't know, yeah, do you want to let people know how to contact you right here on the live stream?
Yes, you can reach me at find me on Facebook, Soulful Solutions LLC, on Facebook, or you can go to my website, that's soulful-solutions.com, and there's some information on there as well. Phone number, if you're in the local area, when you see that on the website, there's a place to purchase the book on there as well. There's a link. It can be purchased on Amazon, and also Kindle version is available as well. But if you have some additional questions, you can find that information on the website, and hopefully this was a helpful dialogue to you.
Great, great. And you can find me Clark underscore on Instagram or donjclark.com. Again, that's Don Clark underscore or donjclark.com. That's where you can find me. And yeah, maybe me and Vanessa will do this again.
Yes.
Well, not even maybe, more than likely we'll be doing this again because we have a lot of conversations, and it's always, like we said, it's always good when we link up and we push each other. We're both Capricorns,
Exactly.
so we a lot of the things that we talk about, we pretty much already think alike on those topics.
Yep.
Yeah, you're gonna get a lot from us.
And then maybe we can have some dialogue where we can invite some people in, do a Q&A.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Next time we'll have more people in the chat where they can ask questions and we can go from there instead of just freestyling it.
Yeah, but it's good to kind of, get the conversation started, because like I said earlier, it's one of those things that's kind of hard for people to. I think we put enough information out and kind of had enough good questions that people can really think about what they might want to ask the next time around.
Right, right, right. All right, well, we can wrap up.
All right. Till the next time.
See you next time, Queen. How you doing?
All right. You be safe.
All right.
All right. You take it easy.